Welcome to PR After Hours, your weekly cocktail of news and interviews with leading thinkers in PR, marketing, and business. So pull up a chair in our virtual lounge. Your host, Alex Greenwood, will be right back after this.
You know, it was years ago. I was starting a job. It was brand new there, met everybody. I felt like I was getting along great with everybody. And I thought, this is going to be great. I'm meeting wonderful people. I seem to be fitting in just wonderfully. But there was this one dude. He wasn't my direct boss, but he was kind of equal to my boss. And he always gave me, for want of a better term, he always kind of gave me the stink eye. And I didn't understand what the problem was. So one time at lunch, my boss and I were at lunch, and I asked her, I said, hey, what's the deal with, let's just call him Jim. What's the deal with Jim? He doesn't, I just can't seem to connect with him. I don't think he likes me. And she says, yeah, he says you smile too much. And I just thought, wow. But you know what that really was, I think? That was just really his way of saying, I don't like the way he emotes at work. I don't like the way he talks at work. I don't like the way he interacts at work. And let me tell you, that has stuck with me for now, 25 years. So I'm excited, so excited that we have a wonderful expert on this kind of thing right here, right now. We have Devora Zack. She is a Washington Post best-selling author and global keynote speaker with books in, get ready, 45 languages. Her clients include the Smithsonian, Pfizer, Delta Airlines, and the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. She's been featured on the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, just about every TV station you can think of, Forbes, and among many others. And she graduated with honors from Cornell University and the University of Pennsylvania, and is also the author of Networking for People Who Hate Networking, Managing for People Who Hate Managing, and Single Tasking. But today we're going to talk about her latest book, The Cactus and Snowflake at Work. Devora Zack, welcome to the Virtual Lounge.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So the guy just thought I smiled too much.
So this is, when you told that story, I immediately thought of one of my ideas in this book, which has been very helpful for a lot of people, including myself at times. And it's nay, not about you. So just remember that none of that had anything to do with you whatsoever.
You know what? And it does turn out, I can't say all of it, but I will tell you, you're exactly right. It really didn't. He had other reasons to dislike me. But anyway, that's not my fault anyway. But I love it. It's so funny you talk about the nay, because I mean, I literally have written in my notes nay on there because I so want to talk about that. Is that a thing in particular with empathetic people? I think I am more of a snowflake, and I didn't even ask you to explain cactus and snowflake. But if you would quickly, just what do you call what type of person at work is a cactus, and what type is a snowflake?
So a cactus leads with the head and a snowflake leads with the heart. So just in a nutshell, a cactus values logic, whereas a snowflake values sensitivity more highly. A cactus in making decisions focuses on being analytical, whereas a snowflake will make decisions based on feelings and empathy. And a cactus will pride him or herself on being direct in engaging in conversations, whereas a snowflake is more diplomatic in conversations. That's a bird's eye view.
Yeah, and I think that I am pretty much of the snowflake variety, more empathetic, try to be a better listener. I mean, I can be direct just like anybody else, but I think you go to great pains to say that in your book too. It's like nobody's really completely one or completely the other, really. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So there's not that there's two types of people. First of all, there's a lot of other things going on in our personalities besides this component of who we are. And secondly, it's not that you're either a snowflake or a cactus. Most people are somewhere along a continuum. So picture like a line, and most of us are somewhere in the middle. Furthermore, there's a big difference, and it's important to keep this in mind as well, between behavior and innate preference. So your innate preference might be to give a lot of positive reinforcement, and then that's also reflected in your behavior. I may have a preference to be more like a cactus and not to naturally give positive reinforcement, but I may learn that it serves me well and it makes me a better manager if I can also give positive reinforcement. So that's a learned behavior. It doesn't change who I am.
Well, and I think it's beneficial. I've also done like a DISC assessment. I don't know if you've heard of those, but it's one of those kind of
Sure,
that
sure.
worked.
Mhm.
And it showed that I'm basically what I just said. I'm more empathetic on this, but it didn't mean I was completely that. And I, of course, have learned in the past 30 years in the world of work how to try to communicate with people the way they want to be communicated with. As you say, often I think in the book is that you kind of find people where they are. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So the idea is not to want other people to change or to hit our heads against the wall thinking that they should be different. The idea is to say, let's just pretend and live as if, it's called the as if reframe, as if everyone's exactly how they're supposed to be. And it's up to me to meet people where they're at. It's not a matter of what's fair or what's right or who's better or who's more senior. It's just about deciding that we're going to meet people where they're at. And to do that, first, you want to have the foundation of really understanding your own self and accepting who you are. And secondly, it's figuring out how other people want to be treated, which is not always so easy, but I've kind of given a component which is only 2 steps, which helps us a lot in this quest. And it's called the big 2. The first is to observe. So to observe how people behave, what they talk about, the words they use, their language, what they're excited by, what motivates them. And the second part of the big 2 is so simple and so useful, and most of us overlook it, simply to ask people, how do you like to receive feedback? So what works for you when you're have meetings with people? And just ask questions. And then you won't always get it right, but you're much more likely to get it right if you take the time to observe and ask.
Devora, I just literally 3 weeks ago walked into a new situation. Regular listeners know to the show know that I've had my own business for 12 years, but I've kind of taken a break with a big contract where I'm basically becoming somebody else's employee for about 10 months. Okay. So just today, I spent my first full day in an office. Most of the time it's like this, right? It's through Zoom and that, but I have to go into the office about once a week. But it's just interesting how on Zoom, in my opinion, it's such a flat affect, pardon me, but it literally is. It's harder to read people. It's harder to understand that push-pull of how they like to receive information. And I can tell just going in today and actually meeting the people who I work for and with, that I got a lot of it wrong. Is that, you see what I'm saying? I think Zoom is not a great way to help you do that. Or is it just me? Do I need to actually be in the room with people for me to kind of use my superpower?
Well, first of all, I love that you said use my superpower, because one thing I talk about in the book is everyone has their superpowers. Maybe that's why you said it, or maybe you just said it naturally yourself.
Could be.
You did your homework. And so the first thing is, one type isn't better than another type. So everybody has great abilities to make a big difference, a positive impact on the world, help a lot of people, being true to who they are. That said, we're going to have very different personality styles. Zoom, to your point, we're not going to get as many nonverbals as we get in person. We won't get as many cues. However, sometimes I feel like people just sort of throw in the towel and give up and say, well, it's Zoom, so we can't get to know each other. Whereas there's still a lot of things that we can do. We can have ways to ask questions and have little icebreakers in meetings. We can have people say you don't get one-on-one time. Well, it doesn't happen as naturally, but you can say, hey, want to go on a virtual walk with me for 10 minutes or a virtual cafe? And let's just get to know each other for a few minutes, just like we would in the office. It's not the same. However, there are ways to get to know each other by Zoom. And I actually work hard with my clients to make that happen.
That's brilliant. I hadn't thought about that. So you're using Zoom, but you're not using it in the way people generally do. It's not just utilitarian, it's time to have a meeting. You're actually saying, we're going to use this tool, but we're going to do it in a more human, pardon the term, way. Would you even say something like, look, I'm going to get a cup of coffee, you get a cup of coffee or tea or whatever, and we're going to, for 15 minutes, we're just going to chat about who we are, what we do, our lives, that kind of thing. Is that
100%? And you can do that one-on-one. You can do it with the whole group. I've done meetings with large groups where partway through, I'm like, okay, we're going to do a 7th inning stretch, and everyone stands up and teaches each other like different ways of being physical, like whether it's like a little cardio kickboxing or a little yoga or a little game where you have to move around. So people say we don't like sitting still. So make ways to not be sitting still the whole time.
Yeah, of course, with that standing up, you should be wearing pants, folks. Make sure you're wearing
That's right. People learn that quickly when they attend one of my meetings.
Yeah, you don't want a virtual visit from HR, do you? All this talk about the way things are. You want to use that? You can go ahead. Oh man, she's like, why am I on this show? Okay. Can I tell you what I thought of? And that's because I'm a big nerd. Okay, and you probably are not into this, but to me, I kept thinking about Cactus and the Snowflake, and I have to. This is how I am. I have to kind of put it in. I have to make it my own somehow, right? And you use these avatars of a cactus and a snowflake. I think of Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock.
Great. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm all for finding more and more metaphors to describe the differences between, really, it's based in Carl Jung's typology, which he used the term thinker and feeler. But if you want to say something else, like whether it's a cactus and snowflake or your own version of it, that's great. It helps it make it more visceral, and we can really wrap our heads around it more easily when we have an image or a story that is attached to it.
Yeah, and I like to think I'm Jung at heart. All right.
I'm a good audience for you.
yeah. Can we do this every day? Because see, that joke's not going well at the new job. No, I'm just kidding. It's going fine. Although I do the old man puns and everybody groans, but I think they're realizing, oh, that's just his way of hi. That's just me. But I have been, a soldier, so to speak, but I've also been a leader many times in my career. At one time, I did feel a lot of pressure to be more like a cactus. I mean, I had some. I think moving it over to the right or the left, or what do you want to say? Getting closer to cactus was good, but I also think though that it started to fail for me because I think I started to deny some of my traits that I think are important. I'm pretty empathetic. I try to remember I have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, and I always believe you can only fake it for so long. So, what advice do you have to give people about that?
So I think it's finding a balance between being authentic and flexible. So I talk a lot about authenticity and nurturing your nature and being true to who you are and honoring who you are. And at the same time, I use the term flex your style quite a bit in this book and in some other books as well. So you're not being fake, you're still being real. You just have a wider toolbox of techniques and language and motivators to work with different people more effectively. So it's the awareness. For example, just a really simple way of building language dexterity is when you might notice that thinkers or cacti use the word think more often and various versions of the word think, and snowflakes tend to use the word feel more often. So that's a really interesting thing to start to notice in speaking of meetings, whether it's one-on-one or in groups, just to start to pick up on the cues and clues people are constantly bombarding us with about how their minds work and how they engage the world. And then matching that. So if I'm working with you and I think you're a snowflake and let's say I'm a cactus. And so I usually talk about, I think we should do this. And what do you think about that? And in English, those two words are usually interchangeable. So I might say, so how do you feel about that? Or do you feel like that's a good idea? And all it does is help establish a different type of rapport between us. And I'm still myself and you're still yourself, but we're just using language that the other one can relate to. And if you're speaking for a group, if let's say you're preparing a presentation, you just can assume there's going to be a mix of both and get adept at testing out both different types of language. That's like a good place to start, just bite-sized pieces.
I love that. That's so great. And this book is full of great bite-sized pieces, by the way, folks. And the way the book is laid out, it's fun to read. A lot of times, Devora, when we have authors on our show, business book authors and the like, some people kind of recoil because business books tend to be kind of dry at times. Not this. This is fun. It's got like these quizzes, all this wonderful stuff. I like the layout. There's little cheat sheets and all this stuff at the end of stuff. You learn stuff and it's in a fun way. You talk about this a lot in the book. And this is something that for the longest time in my life, I've had to deal with is, this goes right into Nay again, but I used to think like if I had a tough word or two with somebody at work, that it was a huge event, that they were enemies for life, all this stuff. And it really wasn't that. It might have been back when I was really young, it might have just been a criticism that wasn't put in a candy-coated way. Is there a way to transform what you think or feel is a big deal into a non-event?
I knew you were going to ask about the non-event. I just had a feeling. I had a thought.
Nice.
So what I introduced this concept in the book of the non-event, and I have to say it is one of my favorite concepts in there because we think that people have a lot of altercations or they don't see eye to eye. But more often than not, something that is, to use your examples, like something that might really upset one person, literally nothing even occurred to the other person. They may not even know it happened. And most of us have been on both sides of this many times. Like, have you ever found out you offended someone about the way you signed off on an email or something that you didn't even remember? It wasn't even in your conscious thought process to even think about it or how you felt about it.
Right.
So it happens we've been on that end of it. And we also probably have inadvertently done something that upset somebody else. So always be on the lookout to think, is it a non-event? Like maybe I'm getting worked up for no reason. Maybe the other person's worked up, but I didn't mean it. So then also to your point, you said, can you make something into a non-event? And at times, especially snowflakes, it's true, will internalize a lot and get worked up and feel terrible about something and be just undone by a perceived altercation. And so one method I introduce in the Cactus and Snowflake at work is to picture a ruler, a 12-inch ruler, or you can use centimeters, the metric system. And if you're really upset by something, ask yourself, on a scale of 1 to 12 on this ruler, how likely is it that I'll even remember this happened a year from now? And you can go from being really upset about something to thinking, you know what, this basically will be a non-event before I know it.
I think that your book has got some fantastic tips on how both cacti and snowflakes can live together in a work situation in a non-eventful way and in a successful way. I just got to ask you one other question. Have you had any readers get back to you? What do they say the most about the book to you?
That they love the sparkly cover.
Well, it's beautiful. And there'll be a picture in the show notes at PR.
No, that's the thing I actually get most excited about in the book. Judge a book by its cover. Oh my gosh. Actually, one thing that I really like, I have heard from a number of readers at this point about what they like. And it's great that it's all different things. Yeah. So it's, for some people, it's looking at our thoughts, words, and actions, as opposed to things we can't control. Thoughts and feelings aren't facts, that we can focus on what's personally relevant to different people and build rapport. A lot of people really get a kick out of the chapter on personal life because we're humans, whether we're at work or at home. So a lot of the same principles. And so people ask me a lot, especially after interviews like this, a podcast or a radio or a TV interview. And then at the end, the person interviewing me will ask me about their personal life and how it impacts their significant other. And that always makes me smile.
As you should. Folks, I think you really owe it to yourself if you're out in the world of work, even if it's just through Zoom right now. The Cactus and Snowflake at Work, how the logical Mr. Spock and sensitive, Captain Kirk was kind of sensitive, can thrive side by side. It's not a Star Trek book. That's just my own spin. By Devora Zack, best-selling author of Networking for People Who Hate Networking. That's another book I got to check out. I'm a fan now. It's so great to have you. Devora Zack, thank you for joining us here in the virtual lounge.
Thank you. You'll love networking. It looks at a different aspect of personality, introversion, extroversion. You'll get a kick out of it. I
think I need to pick it up and then ask you back.
Sounds good.
Devora, again, I enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much and good luck with the book.
Oh, thank you.
Hey listeners, are you considering new ways to build awareness for yourself, your clients, your brand, your business? Might I suggest the podcast option? The podcast option is actually my new ebook available exclusively on Amazon.com. In this fast-reading book, I give you the benefit of my 15 years podcasting and broadcasting experience with stories, practical tips, and advice from hundreds of hours I've spent as a podcast host, producer, and guest. The podcast option is mandatory reading for those new to podcasting and a welcome addition to the veteran podcasters library. You can get the podcast option, tips and tricks to make podcasting work for you, exclusively on Amazon.com, or you can click on the link in the show notes or visit prafterhours.com. The podcast option, I hope you will choose it.
You know what that means? It's last call here at the Virtual Lounge. Be sure to visit prafterhours.com for links to what we discussed in this episode and more. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And join us next time for another round at PR After Hours with Alex Greenwood.